Yo, what's up guys, REAPOFF here, and welcome back to another Skork video. It's almost 3 a.m. guys. I did a few recordings of this and I keep messing up. First time, I just wanted to condense the video. Second time, everything went well. It was like 13 minutes. But I was recording with my speed art settings because I'm doing a little bit of a speed art right now. In the making, might come out to YouTube, who knows. I always end up not putting up content when I mention them in videos like this. I have no idea why. It's just a thing. But to not get off topic too much, I'm up at a time where I'm not supposed to be. I'm very tired. My eyes are having a very hard time staying open. And yeah, I'm very tired, guys. But when I get into a coding rhythm, I cannot stop. I can't go to sleep knowing that I could have wrote code and I didn't. Because I have the anxiety that I will forget what I was thinking about. And guys, if you code, you might be the same way. You cannot, like, I don't know, I can't function. If I think about code and I can't write it to test it, can't function. I gotta test the code in my head. And sometimes I don't, but anyways, let's look at these 5 classes in Skork and their respective specialized functions. Skork compiles a class that checks line by line if all the Skork code is syntactically correct. Contains various functions to check such things. Skork conventions. Functions for testing whether Skork naming conventions apply to a string. So green, by the way, is classes that are at least started and have some functionality. Gray is like I didn't even start at all. Skork debug is a class that debugs a Skork code and grabs objects stored in Skork instructions class. So that's really important here. This is going to be this. I'm defining this class to have composition already from the get-go, and it's going to contain a Skork instructions. What do you call it? Instance, or yeah, it's composed of that. Whatever. Skork instructions class stores the objects created within the Skork code. So your integers, your Skork, your sprites, your booleans, your doubles, like actual like variables that you create in Skork, it's stored in the instructions class. And Skork keys ID adds a unique number to separate every variable and object created in Skork, not a singleton, because okay, first adds a unique number to separate every variable object created in Skork. Example, if I have a for loop, you know, whatever, let's just do pseudocode. I have a for loop, and I create in that for loop int I equals 0, or int I equals I plus or j plus 1. Okay, this I gets created however many times in this for loop. Okay, but they have the same name. If I didn't give a unique number or differentiate these different I variables, we're gonna have a collision. It's gonna be like, okay, which I are you doing? Or it won't even have a collision. You want to manipulate one of the i's, and it's gonna manipulate the first index or the last index of occurring or first occurrence of the I. So either or is very bad. I'd rather it actually crash, the program crash, than to manipulate a variable I have no idea about or which one it is. So that just gives you an idea of what that does. You're going to see in detail how this works because I'm going to show you creating a variable in Skork and how cool it is right now. It actually works pretty well. So yeah, this last part is kind of, you know, designed for those people interested. Right now, this class is not a singleton because newer objects increment the ID and statics and the statics inside, because when creating new objects of this class, we don't want to create more IDs. So let's look at the Skork keys ID class in detail here. Here it is. We have the static ID variable that's type long. The static constructor, for that, initializing it to 0. And the default constructor, which adds 1 to ID no matter what. Now let's talk about statics really quick, because I don't think I've used statics in a video before, or at least a static constructor. So just like a static constructor is called immediately before any instance is created of that. It's actually called before runtime. So before runtime, before, like during compile time basically, we create this ID. It's stored in memory somewhere, and we also create or instantiate it to 0 before any instance of Skork keys ID is created. Even on runtime, the first line of code on runtime, I create an object Skork keys ID, and I instantiate it using the default constructor, which adds 1. It will work because a static constructor was already called. It instantiated the object. If I didn't have this, guys, any time I create a instance of Skork keys ID class, adding 1 to null is null, which you get a null reference exception and the program will crash. Okay, so without this, you know, we'd crash every time we construct this object, which is bad news. So that's just a little refresher for you guys if you don't know exactly what statics do or static constructors do. There you go. If you have any static variable, do not instantiate it up here. Instantiate it in the static constructor. It is good practice. And yeah, the reason we don't have this in front, because you know how I like to refer to my instance variables with this, because it's really clean. You really know that it's an instance variable when you have this dot preceding it, is because it's not an instance, as the compilers complain. It's not valid on a static property. Yeah, so there you go, guys. So we just add 1, and the toString method just returns with the arrow function. It's like kind of like lambda. I'm not entirely sure how this works, but I see it as a one-line function, one-line method really. So whenever toString is called, ID returns the ID that toString. So whatever it is at that instant. So constructing it adds 1, and then calling the toString returns it basically. So I'm going to show you how convenient that is when actually creating identifiers in Skork. So going back, we have the Skork conventions class and Skork instructions. Let's first look at conventions. So in the conventions class, we have a member function called isValidIdentifier, and it returns an integer. Okay, returns 0 if everything went through. If it's a valid identifier, it returns 0. If it's not, well, let's see what happens. It returns 1 if the first character starts with any of the invalid cars. So here's invalid cars. So if it contains any of that, so I should really change this to invalid start, because that's what it's really testing. So invalid start is all of these characters, okay? Including the space right there. The double backslash for the actual backslash, and for the quote as well, the double quote. You can't have a double quote. So these are all the Unicode symbols. Alright, anyways. The next one, sorry, I'm losing focus. The second one returns 2 if the identifier contains invalid inside characters, which means anything after the numbers, so these. So you could have hello 1 as a variable, that works, as long as it's not before the variable starts, any valid character, it's after. So as long as you have A through Z as the 0th position of your identifier, and you follow it by any number of numbers, you're good to go. As long as there's a H before. It's kind of distinguish an integer in Skork and a variable. Okay, returns 3 if the identifier is greater than the character limit. So it's 25 right now. And returns 4 if the identifier is a keyword. Okay. So let's look at that. By the way, I wanted to mention this. When I was working on the code, I initially had it to this. Just some code lessons for you guys. When you have a string on the left and a string on the right, you want to compare the contents of that string, not memory locations or anything like that. This will not do. The equal operator is going to fail to do this. This will not check if the identifiers characters are equivalent to the keyword characters. Okay, it's not going to do it. You must use the dot equals method here. I just want to bring that up because it is something I overlooked a little bit before. But I was like, okay, I entered the keyword and it didn't catch, it didn't return 4. So I looked at my condition for checking that, and lo and behold, I used the equals. And it's just something you overlook. You know, it's syntactically correct. The compiler won't, be mad. It'll run. It just won't give you the result you expect. It's a logical error. So be very careful of that. So dot equals, guys, on strings compares the contents. You must use it this way. It's the only way. Okay. If you want to compare contents. Anyways, return 0 if it's all good. So that's Skork conventions. Skork instructions, has static ints, double, bool, and sprite dictionaries containing the name of that variable. So the variable name is on the left, the string, and the value is on the right. Think of it left, right. The name of my sprite is the string on the left, and then the sprite itself is on the right. And so let's look at that. So here's a static constructor. Here's our overloaded contains key method that returns that condition based on the actual dictionary member function contains key method. Okay. I think I'm being overly explanatory. I'm going to assume some of this. I should start assuming, some of these things you should know if you're watching these videos. But if you don't, I guess it's a lesson. It's whatever. It's too late to think too much. Alright, we have an integer called ident, and it's equal to the Skork conventions. Yeah, Skork conventions class dot, and I use the isValid identifier, pass name through it, and then that's going to return 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I do a switch statement on that. Now if it's case 0, check if it also contains the key. Now this is never going to really happen, but just in case, we want to return false here. We don't want the program to crash. Just return false, don't create the key. Else, ints.add, okay, remember the Skork keys ID, how it works. We instantiate it, so we're calling the default constructor here, because there's nothing in these parentheses, and then call the toString method immediately. So add one and grab and return it right away. So it's just like that, guys. That's the beauty of it. Add a backslash. We use 2 of them to escape the first one. And then add name. So this is the left side of the ints, the string that I'm passing through. I should really be pointing here. So this is the name. So it's the new Skork keys ID reference plus name, and then the value, and then return true. Else, put these message boxes, and then it's gonna break, exit the switch statement, then return false. Alright, so with all that being said, about 14 minutes later, let's test it. So reap0 is a valid identifier. But I'm gonna do it this way so it's easier. We're gonna work with student0. Student0 is a valid identifier. Student0 is 7. So look, 1 backslash student0 equals 7, because student is a valid identifier. We're gonna do student0 again, exactly how it is typed. And we're gonna make this 8 though. So the first student0 is 7, the second student0 is 8. Okay, we're gonna add some keys. So R0R x3, let's say that's a variable name, and the int value is 5. The first character 0 is invalid, so it makes, and you saw how it passed on the title of Skork invalid identifier exception. And then this is just going to keep listing our current identifier, so it shows that I didn't edit. So reap with the s, or let's just do it in between like that, and then int value 6. I'm gonna make reap contains a character that's invalid, and then it puts back the, you know, lists it again. Let's do go-to. That's a keyword in Skork, I believe. I added it. And 5, go-to is a keyword. No variable can be a keyword. And so, for example, sprite is also a keyword. Or if I do it like this, should still work. Oh no. Okay, so that's something I'll have to do. I'm just gonna have to call the toLower method in here. So name equals name dot toLower. That's it. This should work. So if I go back and do sprite, yep, there you go. Sprite is a keyword. Yeah, but that's gonna be weird. I gotta check if it's a keyword. The internal. Yeah, I know what to do. So in conventions. There we go. So I'm not actually mutating the identifier. I'm just checking if its toLower part is contained. So sprite 3 should work. Oh no, I didn't enter an integer. Sorry guys. Sprite, let's just do it like that. Sprite is a keyword. No variable can be a keyword. So yeah, there we go. So it keeps the capitalization, because that's how I initially wrote it. Yeah, there we go. But it knows that it's a keyword still. So reap 0, that's good. And so it just increments one by one with this awesome little trick of how I designed the Skork keys idea to work. It's so cool, guys. Anyways, that's going to be about it. This is getting too long. Thanks so much for watching. By the way, I want to talk a little bit about the commits. From now on, I'm really going to try not to commit too much to Skork. I'm only going to commit one class at a time. Because something like this is going to happen. See, 36 changed files all have this commit message. So if we go back, when you do a stage all commit, that's not good. Because look. 2 different folders have the same message. That's horrible. Look at all of these folders have the same message. Ooh, look at that. It's not good, guys. Not good. So once I make a change to every class in Skork, it's going to have its own commit, so we know exactly what we changed. And yeah, guys. Oh man, I'm very, very, very tired. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please let me know in the comments, and any feedback you'd like, it's greatly appreciated. Peace out now.